Oh. There you go, there's some leather. Oh. No, don't do that! Hi. Welcome to my video about my... Oh. Sorry, hang on, this is a low car. Not put that one through either. Good start. There we go. Right. Okay. Hello. This is my first ever YouTube video. Well, first ever one that I've recorded deliberately for YouTube. I'm not a natural in front of a camera. If this is weird or not funny or awkward or anything like that, well, tough. There's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, this is a dream come true. It's majestic. This is, I just get a kick out of saying this still, this is my CITROEN SM. I own a CITROEN SM. Okay, yeah, it's, okay, yeah, it needs some work. Fair bit of work. That's kind of what this is all about. I run a garage, sort of, well, half garage, half scrapyard. Basically, I've always wanted one. It's my dream car. I've always wanted one since I was 12. I mean, my dream car, actually, my first dream car was the Citroen BX 16 valve, but they're not that hard to get, really. I mean, they're quite rare, but I got one when I was 20. So it's not really that. In fact, I paid about £700 for it. Not very unattainable. These, generally speaking, without wanting to get all tacky and horrible about it, generally a bit more money. They're regarded, even in Citroen circles, Citroens being cars that are not normally that expensive, normally quite accessible for most people. These are regarded as kind of a bit of a, you know, cut above. Not this one. Not this one. So, in view of being fully transparent with everyone about the journey and the costs involved and everything like that on a car like this, which is, I've discovered already, a car that's made everybody else almost in awe that someone would be this stupid to buy this car. I'll be upfront about the costs. I have a garage, as I say. Labour, we can't account for labour. It doesn't work like that. It's going to be materials, parts, things like that. It's going to be a long-term project. It's going to be a slow burner. But the plan is to get this back on the road and being enjoyed. I paid for this car £4,100, which seems like a hell of a lot of money for something that you can sort of take apart with your hand. But for an SM, that's actually very cheap. It's probably the cheapest I've seen in the UK. It's certainly in the times I've been looking to see how much they go for. So yeah, it's kind of, it's worth that in bits. I mean, that's kind of the way to look at it. It's, you know, it's worth that in bits. That's not my intention at all. I should state that now. I'm not breaking it. It's going back on the road. It's never been on the road in the UK, full stop. So it will be a first for that. But yeah, it is what it is. It's a project. They say always buy the best you can afford, especially with cars like this. Always buy the best one you can afford. Well, I did. I had to beg, borrow, steal, sell other cars to make this happen. So I'm not a billionaire. I'm probably got less money than you, whoever you are watching this. But yeah, we'll get there. We'll do it. I've got a lot of other cars I'm also doing. I'm supposed to be doing this one. And I've got some other Citroens, some projects. I've got Hillman Imp behind, which is overdue being back on the road by about 2 months, and then a lot of other customers' cars. So this will take a little while. If I've got all these other cars, got all these other projects, some of which I haven't even started, why did I end up with it now? To be honest, I had always I'd kind of written the idea of having an SM off. It was always on my top dream cars list. My lotto win order was SM at the top, and then a Lexus LFA, and then a Toyota 2000 GT. So although I'm a bit of a French car fan, my top two, second and third, were Toyotas basically. But I like cars that are a technical exercise, that are there to flex the muscles of the manufacturer. You know, they're there where the engineers and the designers just got creative freedom to just go off and go nuts. They're the best cars. I want engineering. I want passion and enthusiasm, and you can sense that with this car, as you can with other cars. And that's why this car was always going to be top for me, because you know, I'm a big Citroen fan, grew up with them, have owned many, and I love the suspension. I've never had one this old before. In fact, I've never had a pre-PSA Citroen. This is the first one. So it's a learning curve, but straight away, honestly, within hours of getting it, you could sense the difference between this and a PSA Citroen, and I was quite surprised by that. But yeah, it's there as a project, and it's come about slightly in an odd way, because my plan originally, I'd written the idea of an SM off because the top ones are sort of 25, 30, I mean, I've seen them for 50 grand for a Citroen, you know, it seems crazy, because they're not typically expensive cars. So I'd written the idea off, but I was open to a DS. I'd been looking at GS's, I like the early GS's, and we had a CX in a couple of weeks ago, a very early CX, and that was beautiful. Beautiful car. You don't appreciate them until you've got one up close, a nice one. And I realised I didn't know much about those either. So I hadn't really put much thought into it. And this one came about because I was watching a video on YouTube. A video by the Late Break Show. So Johnny Smith, who used to be in Fifth Gear and is known as Car Pervert normally, which is the best name ever. Not a very marketable name, I understand why he's changed it, but yeah. He did a video where he went and visited a young fella who had a DeLorean, which he bought when he was, I think it was 16 or something like that. Which is another car I love. I'd love a DeLorean. And this fella, he was driving it as a daily. You know, he was using it. And anyway, he did a video of it. You should watch it. It's really good. I don't know how to put links in links in videos. I can do it in the description, but you should watch it. And anyway, later on Twitter, he put a picture up of a DeLorean with its doors up, and said, "Name a better looking silhouette." And so, for some reason, I don't know why, but maybe my competitive side came out. I saw this and thought, oh, alright then. And I found a picture of an SM. When I Google Citroen SM, bang, first one that comes up. Side profile, Citroen SM, bang. And I wrote something like, I hope there are prizes, or I trust there are prizes to be won. The reason I wrote prizes to be won in that order is because I had the Funhouse theme tune going around in my head from when I was a kid, right? And I didn't actually think there were. It was just a joke. It was just like, you don't just put a picture up, you try and write something clever to make yourself look funny. And I wrote that, and then I went off to do some work on a car, and forgot about it, to be honest. And then later on, I came back and it said, he'd replied, and he'd said, basically along the lines of, it's now a competition because I've said it is. I think, whoa, I didn't say it was a competition. So I felt bad because I thought I wasn't making it competitive. But I think it was all in good humour, so I couldn't find yet. And loads of other people put some silhouettes down as well, other cars that would have iconic shapes and things like that. But the SM won. And while the SM was winning, in the middle of it, I said something stupid like, if I win this, because he basically said the winner wins a mug. There's the mug, and there's my tea, which going cold. I did win. There's the mug, and so I bid on the SM, which I said I would do. and it was at about 1,800 quid at the time, so it didn't, yeah. I figured it would go for about 6. My guess was that it would go for about 6. Most wrecked SMs on eBay go for between 6 and 8. He had another car, the fella who was selling this, which had gone for about 6,000 a few months or weeks previous, and that one had been on fire. So that got more than this did. Possibly tells you all you need to know about this one. So yeah, I won the mug. A bid on the car. I had, what day was it? It was a Sunday. I'd watched the Formula 1, the first race of the season. It was the first race of this, that was Imola. So I watched the Imola Grand Prix. So this is the day I won it. And then I watched the football. And the team I support, just very stressful to watch at the moment. So I was bummed out, and the auction on this ended about half an hour after the game, I think, or something like that. It might have been an hour after. And so I thought, screw it, I'm gonna bid. So I just bid. Like 15 seconds to go, just pumped in, bang, 4.5 grand or something like that, and I won it. But it didn't really click. And then after that, it was always kind of a joke in my head. I don't want an SM, yeah, like that would pull off. And I even have a folder on my computer which all the photos of it and everything are stored in, and it's called Project S, or SM Project, in brackets, if it ever happens. Because that's how unrealistic it seemed. I would own an SM. It seemed like a dream. It seemed like it was just unlikely to happen. Here it is. It arrived 4 days ago on a trailer, or on a low loader, and yeah. The guy who delivered this, he said that he's not had a car on a trailer before, on the back of his truck before, that has got so much attention as this one, or certainly not recently. People taking pictures, people stopping in petrol stations, and what, you know, oh my god. Because you don't see them, do you? I mean, you just don't. And I hadn't appreciated up close what they are and how special they are. There's so much you don't see in pictures that you notice in the flesh. The other funny thing about this car is that despite it being a dream car, until Tuesday, just gone, when the car arrived, I'd never sat in an SM, certainly never driven an SM. I'd never even touched an SM, like physically. I peered in the window of them occasionally. That's it. That's all I'd ever done. It was a lot to take that day. My mind is quite a complex place, and it gets quite scrambled, and yeah, that was quite a lot to process. But we're here, we're calm, and I thought, if I've got any car that I'm going to go and share the rebuild of online with people, because normally I write blogs and things on forums and stuff like that, but I thought, if there's any car I'm actually going to make this breakaway and do this with, it's got to be one of these. But the car itself, as you can tell, it is a Citroen SM. Those who know their SMs will know, well, they'll immediately have spotted that it's the ugly one. Because yeah, it's got the federal, I'll call it US Marshals. I don't know why that keeps popping into my head, that film, but the federal front end. It's an American spec car. So this car's come from, I don't know, there'll be some interesting reveals later on in a future video, if I do another one, about the history of this car, because I've got no history at all. I've got one key for the ignition and another very small, very rusty key that doesn't appear to open anything. The passenger door is locked. I can't get the fuel flap open. I don't know if it runs. I'm guessing not. I don't know if it drives. This is the spare wheel. The original wheel had air where the tyre is supposed to be. Normally the air is supposed to be on the inside of the tyre. This one had it everywhere, so you couldn't even roll it. It took me 4 hours to push this car about 10 metres. I was having to put a crowbar between the lug nuts. Christ, I just said lug nuts. The wheel nuts, and between each one, and manoeuvre it. The back end's on skates. They don't work very well either. And this is the furthest corner of the workshop. So I figured I'd get it in the furthest corner of the workshop, because this is the one that is going to be the longest until it goes back outside again. I'll do something on the SM in detail later on, in a future video, a bit more information. There's a fair bit on YouTube already. There are a lot of SM videos just spoiled for SM content, really. This isn't anything new. Obviously, Jay Leno being the primary example of a popular video of an SM on YouTube. Is probably going to have the most views on it. I've watched that video so many times. I was one of the people who, in the beginning of his video, he says, we've had people seeing this in the background, and they keep saying in the comments, "Oh, we can do the SM, do the SM." I was one of those people. When he did the DS, my little ears pricked up, and I said, "Wait, do the SM, please do the SM," because it's a cracking SM. Well, they all are, aren't they? The car itself, I won't go into massive detail. There's plenty of videos on YouTube. There's information everywhere. There are a lot of myths actually as well, and of which I'm probably going to peddle some unknowingly. Key things to remember with SMs at the moment, really, simplify it. There's two specs. There's Euro spec and there's US spec, US Marshals spec, right? Euro spec is the spec that most people would recognise if they recognise an SM at all. Euro spec, the car has 3 headlamps either side. So you've got 3 here, oblong, 2 squares I think it is. And the whole front end's encased in glass, so the number plate sits between the headlamps. If I can figure out how to do it, I'll put a picture of it on the screen about now, somewhere. The number plate goes in the middle, that's behind a glass lens, and the headlamps are also behind a glass lens. The inner lamps, like the DS, they swivel. They turn with the steering, and there's no... you could crouch down at one corner of the car and look through the glass lens on one corner and see out the other side. It's almost like a complete glass tunnel across the front of the car. And the glass is there obviously to aid with aerodynamics, to make it cut through the air, because God, these things cut through the air. I think the drag coefficient is like 0.26, 0.27, which is ridiculous, frankly. I think the Sierra, which was known to be actually quite decent in the early 80s, I think that was, someone will quote me on it, I think it was 0.33. I could be wrong. I know BX is 0.34. 0.26 is ridiculously slippery, especially given that this is in the 70s, but there are so many curves. There's not a straight line on it. There's so many, everything is curved and contoured. It is honestly, it's beautiful. I used to think these things were sort of unconventionally beautiful. That was my view on them. I always thought, even the DS, I would kind of motion that a little bit, because I like unconventionally beautiful cars. Cars that are beautiful cars, you would say, I don't know, Alfa Romeo 8C, people will say E-types. I'm not actually a massive E-type fan, but Toyota 2000 GT, I would, these, I always put this in the kind of under the file, unconventionally beautiful. However, when I've had one, it could just be because I've got rose tinted specs because it's mine. Did I mention I own an SM? Yeah, I could just be excited because it's mine, but I think it is actually really, really beautiful. It's stunning. The design of it is just, it's something else. So many details, but they're so subtle. That's the thing. You get some cars, they are over-styled. They have so many details, try to cram so many details in. Toyotas, these are like the Mirai or whatever it is, and the Prius and everything. It's just like, stop designing it. You finished yesterday. Stop it. You're not going to get bonus time. Whereas this one, there are so many little details, but they're so subtle. You sometimes you don't notice them for days, and you walk past and oh my god, I just noticed something. The C6 is actually like that. The newer C6, which I also have one of those. Can do a video on that if there's interest in it. That was a cheap project. That was the build up to this. That was the dry run. Bought that one cheap as well. It was a bit of a banger project. But yeah, the more time you spend around these things, the more beautiful they get. There's people screaming at the screen. How can you not think they were beautiful? What's wrong with you? But then a lot of people think it's pig ugly. It's a real Marmite car, but I am obviously firmly in the love category. So yeah, there's 2 specs. There's Euro spec and there's US spec. So the Euro spec cars, as I mentioned, 6 lights, glass, funky, pretty cool. In America, they had lots of funny rules and regulations about safety back in the day. And although the car had been designed to, as far as I'm aware at the moment, the car had been designed to be sold. I think they obviously wanted to sell it worldwide. They hadn't really put too much effort into getting it fit for the UK market. There's no right-hand drive version. I think there were some conversions done, but there's no official factory right-hand drive SMs. And they knew they had to sell it around the world, mostly for thinking it might be left-hand drive markets. And although you get cars in Europe and in the UK and things, people were buying people's cars then. They were buying cars that were smaller engines, cheaper to run. That was what people needed. They weren't necessarily after a huge, great big grand touring beast. But in America, big, flat, long roads, quite happy to have huge engines. Probably thought, actually, this is our way into America. And it was. They sold more of these in America than... I don't know if they sold more in America than Europe, or more than they did in France, but they definitely sold more than they did in the UK. I think there was about 3,000. There was about 12,000 odd, over 12,000 or just under 13,000 SMs made. The export models, I don't know how many they made, but I know that I think they sold about 3,000. I could be wrong. I'll look it up, but this is turning into story time, isn't it? So they sold these cars in America, but America had all sorts of funny rules and regulations, as I say. Stone cold. Better break never. And they weren't happy with headlamps that moved. So they said, you can sell the car here, but the headlamps have to be fixed. So you've gone from having 3 halogen, at the time, pretty cutting edge units, to 2 sealed beams, which is not even halogen, 2 like candles either side, which can't move. So that's why it's got round lights at the front, to make it more America friendly. It also doesn't have the glass. The Americans did not want enclosed lights. It was a safety implication, because if you hit somebody and run them over, the glass could crack and injure them. I mean, if you hit somebody with this and run them over, I think the glass is least of their worries, personally. That's just my view. But yeah, that was the rules. The number plate is still encased. The number plate is still in the glass there, because you couldn't run people over with that, I'm guessing. That's what they did. They changed the front end. Obviously, US cars have this here, which I thought this was a reflector. This is actually a marker light. And it's got one on each corner, so you can tell a US spec car. Right, so now we've switched over to phone mode, and it's probably worth having a quick look around the SM. So yeah, that's the US spec front end, federal front end. Normally an SM would have glass all the way across, but as you can see, it doesn't. It only has it in the middle, where it cannot crack, apparently. Bit minging in there, but I think that will clean up. Car is from Ohio. Number plate people from America tell me that green plates in Ohio mean this car has not been on the road for a very long time. Yes, I wonder why that is. I'm hoping it's not broken, but we'll see. Lots of what looks like chrome on the front of this car, and in other places, but this is actually stainless steel, which is why it's not really rusty. It must be really high quality stainless steel. Some dings and some stuff like that. I will try and get some of it out, because I don't want to ruin the lines of the car, but at the same time, I'm very much of the belief that you shouldn't over-restore a car. If it's got a ding in the bumper, there's a reason, there's a story to it. The car has history. I don't know if I want to erase that. Well, I don't want to erase that. I think that's part of the fun. So yeah, walking around the side. That's just in case you forget what it is. Yes, not amazing. And more dirty rag. More stainless work on the back there. Exhausts are well and truly broken. Fair bit of rust around here, but I think the tailgate is actually okay. The tailgate is actually probably one of my favourite features of the car now. I just love the look of it, the style of it. I forget what that type of window is called, where it curves round. A lot of Robert Opron's, his designs had that rear window, and there's a certain nickname for it. Should give a mention to him, actually, because unfortunately he, the designer of this car, this is probably his greatest achievement in terms of car design. Just look at it. It's crazy. He passed away, sadly, at the end of March. And responsible for this, the GS, the CX, which is, I think, vastly underrated in terms of looks. The CX is fantastic as well. He did restyles on the 2CV, he did the Ami. He moved to Renault when Peugeot took over. I think he was quoted as saying, I did not leave Citroen, Citroen left me. So, because they went to Peugeot. I mean, I think it's because they were going broke, because they'd been experimenting with rotary engines and putting in a lot of money into factories that ended up producing things they couldn't sell. But yeah, this is his crowning achievement, I think. This is, I'm so pleased to have this now at a time where the world's just lost him. Well, I've just grabbed a piece of him, and he was a very interesting guy. Yeah, as I say, a bit of a mess. Bit of a mess. Roof's alright. Bit grubby, but it's good. And straight away, there are going to be those who say, oh, put a Euro front end on it, put a Euro... Well, I would have been one of those people. I would have been one of those people up until I got one. And now, again, I'm going back to this whole, it's a US spec car. You know, that's how it's supposed to look. If you get rid of all these US spec front ends because people don't like them, there won't be any left. And there's a reason why it looks like that. It's all part of the story. It's not to say if a Euro front end doesn't come up, I wouldn't fit it if it didn't come up cheap, but it won't come up cheap. It will be millions of pounds because it's an SM. The bonnet here, this is aircraft grade aluminium, apparently. And it opens, and there is the heart of the beast. It's pretty wacky how it's laid out. I mean, this is a huge engine bay. I'm not a tall guy, but I could lay from there to here. I think I could lay across this engine. The engine itself is technically it's mid-engine because it's actually sitting behind the front wheel. So this is a front mid-engine car, like a TVR, of which there are many here. But yes, that is the engine. It's far back in the engine bay because the gearbox is in front of it. It's quite an odd layout. I'll go into the engine more another time, and I'm going to have to rebuild this, I imagine. But it's a Maserati. This is a 3-litre V6 engine, quad cam. I don't know if it's multi-valve. I need to check on that. I don't think it is. Italian engines had a habit of having twin cams, but not having multi-valve engines. So it may well still be a 12-valve. I don't know. But probably one of the best sounding V6s you can hear, I think. It's a 90 degree as well, which is odd for a V6. But all aluminium. Yeah, nice exotic power plant. The car here, this has carburetors. You could get fuel injection as well. Fuel injection on an SM is generally not preferred, which is weird because normally I would always prefer fuel injection. But they have a habit of going on fire, and that's not really what you want. So carburetors are the order of the day. Underneath that black intake there, the Maserati Trident on the top there, and a little Citroen sticker just to say, no, it's Citroen. There are 3 Weber carburetors. So 3 twin-choke Weber carburetors. So it sounds pretty good. Well, it would sound pretty good if it worked, but it doesn't. And then on the front, you have this, I think they call this a rack. So you've got the engine there, and then you've got the gearbox, a transaxle, in front of it. The steering is on top, course, that's Ferrari. That is power steering, not power assisted. It's powered steering. And then there's all this on the front. So you've got your alternator, you've got your suspension or hydraulic high pressure pump, and an air conditioning compressor. Most of these cars had air conditioning. That's the old school piston type, and apparently those are, well, again, I'll go into this in greater detail one day, but because this is overrunning anyway, but those are part of the reason why the timing chains fail on these engines, of which there are 3 timing chains, of course. It wouldn't be simple, would it? Yeah, it's just such a crazy layout. You've got this jack shaft that comes off the front of the engine through what looks like a Hillman MPUJ, rubber donut rather, and drives all this stuff. And then these, I mean, look at the belts. Weird belts. Being as wacky as it is, of course, the brakes are in there. There is a light on this phone. There you go. There you go. I'm just about to see. Yeah, I mean, obviously, of course they are. For engineering, that is the best way to have it, but for changing it in access, it is not the best way to have it. But the best thing, the thing I like about the brakes is if you get down here, you see the radiator grille, and you think that's pretty cool. Down the bottom there, that's stainless. When you go underneath it, and you've got these vents, which I never even knew about. And look, there's the brakes. How cool is that? That reminds me of like the air intake on a Vulcan bomber. You look down it and see the engines. You look down this one and see the brakes. It's just so cool. There's so much of that. So there's a fair bit of cleaning to do, a fair bit of prep. I like this as well. That's the engine oil cooler in what looks like a crumple zone, but it's not. That's an air duct. I look forward to taking all this off. That is connected to these pipes. I've also heard that these pipes have a tendency to rot and burst open while the engine's running, which means all your oil goes everywhere and your oil pressure goes down to 0 pretty quickly. So that's helpful. The interesting thing about this engine bay, and although it looks like, you know, something you'd run away screaming from, the wings here, because that's a wing, this and the inner wing, this is all one panel. So if you remove the front of the car, the nose, and you remove the wings, you basically end up with a sort of skeleton underneath it, with just all the mechanical stuff at hand. So in a way, this is an easy car to work on, isn't it? I mean, you just keep telling myself that. But yes, that will be. I look forward to working in there. Actually, I'm relishing that bit because I like learning new things and how different approaches work. And there is certainly not much that's more different than that. You know, unless it was steam powered, that's about the only difference you could have, or nuclear powered. And then we go to the inside of the car briefly. I can't spend too long in here because I've not had enough of my boosters. This door does open, and it's a ladder. Yes, yeah, that's a bit. It's a bit of a mess. So yeah, I found all this stuff. If I edit this correctly, you'll see all this stuff that I found the other day. But yeah, it's a bit sad. But it's there, look at that. And this is actually in really good condition. This, I've been cleaning that up, and yeah, it needs a new dash top. I assumed, because it's America, you know, hot sun and everything like that. Well, it's from Ohio, which I think is colder than here. The floor. Bits of welding to be done. And then around the back, if I can open it one-handed, there we go. A boot, which I should be stripping and cleaning and everything like that. Whole back end's going to have to come off and be cleaned down. But it's there, it's complete, all the hubcaps are here. I haven't got the resin wheels. I'd love to have had the resin wheels. The optional wheels on SMs were, I think they were a compressed fibre injection moulded composite wheel. They weighed half as much as the steel wheel apparently, and that's not that heavy. Those are quite expensive. This doesn't have them. This has just got the standard steel wheels with the stainless hubcaps, I suppose you'd say, wheel trims, hubcaps. It's got the arch spats in the back, very important. So those are what go over here. This is quite difficult to do one-handed. I hadn't appreciated it. There you go. So that covers the wheels up, which of course I will do. There's a battery clamp and toolboxes in here. And if you look closely under here, you can see the floor. Oh dear, look at that. Great. Thing I also love about it, I mean, I just love the way the boot opens, it's so cool. But this shelf, it's like it's a proper parcel shelf. That is a hinged metal panel. So yeah. Obviously the big thing with this car, mechanicals are unknown, not too worried about those. It's nuts and bolts, isn't it? But the body is, yeah. I mean, a lot of people have sort of turned their nose up when I said it's come from Ohio, because apparently they use a lot of salt on the roads. But this thing's only done 49,000 miles, so I'm hoping it hasn't been driven on the roads, and that all this corrosion is just a result of it being sat around. I mean, apologies, you can't see very much of it because this camera, well, my phone doesn't zoom out very far, and it is stuffed in the corner of the workshop. But yeah, I mean, it's not too, well, it's a bit frilly. I think that, yeah, there's a bit of, there's a bit, oh dear, oh Christ, oh. So I'm shaking you around. Ah. Oh, that's the door. Oh, the door's come up. Oh, good, it's come apart. Let me put a light on. Oh, good. Excellent. Oh, yeah, that's looking pretty tasty. So, yeah, and then obviously the rear panel. I mean, the door's not a problem, that's a bolt-on part anyway, I can repair that, but this is, yeah. Okay, it's pretty bad. Pretty bad. Pretty dented there as well. Need a new one of these. That's not part of the story. That just needs changing. So anyway, that's probably overrun from what I was intending to do. It's really just, I felt like I had to kick it off, even if I don't get much done in the near future. Get it done while it's fresh in my head, get it recorded, share it. It should be good fun, and I think there's a lot of people who probably would like to have a car like this, a project like this, because as I say, cost-wise, this wasn't out of the realms of most people, but you know, I think on driveways people would run scared of something like this, and I understand that, so I shall try and make this as accessible and involving for everybody as possible. There we go. There is the beginning of the project. And the end of it will be probably in many, many, many years, but it's going to be fun. Anyway, thanks for that. Thanks for watching, and I hope I give you something worthwhile in the future. But if I don't, sorry. Bye.